When was it personally that you decided to sort of go more into PR from obviously starting as a reporter or a journalist? When did you sort of think, oh, I wanted to go into PR?
I think it was probably an evolution, but I think also obviously in the presentation I talked about the similar skills that you would have working as a journalist as you would within PR, identifying those stories, those news hooks, and knowing what is going to kind of be newsworthy, interesting, what's going to engage people. You have those fundamental skills that are interchangeable, but I think when I worked as a newspaper journalist, I did a lot of court reporting. I did, kind of death knocks. I did quite a few things where we'd go to court and there'd be quite sordid kind of stories that I'd have to follow, and you would then take a photographer to that person's house from sort of 3-4 in the morning waiting for them to come out and get a photo of them. There are a lot of things that if you naturally kind of enjoy breaking news and finding out the truth and uncovering it and really kind of portraying it to the world, it's perfect. It's the right avenue to go down. For whatever reason, I felt over time that I wasn't that personality. I preferred to be the trusted person, the person alongside or in-house, or working with someone to kind of find their way through a situation. And I think it's more a personal preference and the personality you have and the kind of things that you want to achieve and the things that really drive you in the morning to get up out of bed and go and enjoy a job. And I think in the couple of years at the start of the FA, I was interviewing people, I was writing match reports, and at the same time, because it was quite a small team, I was also then taking managers to press conferences, taking players through mix zones. I went to a women's tournament in China, the Women's World Cup, and I would do interviews with the players post-match and then take Hope Powell into a press conference and kind of prepare them and brief them. And I just instinctively enjoyed the process of getting someone ready and prepared and knowing instinctively what the 5 or 10 things that she would be asked about and almost kind of getting a pat on the back afterwards. I preferred that than being the person at the front row saying, Hope, why did you, what the decision you made or the tactical change or whatever the story would be. I just preferred that, and that's probably why I moved more into the PR side.
No questions? Can I ask one? In the era of PR, is it possible for journalists to forge relationships with players or managers?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of them do it. I think. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky to get close because now there's quite an entourage. There's agents and managers, and people have their own personal PR advisors. A football club will have their PR department. The national team will have a PR department, and that's true of most sports, really, most professional sports. There are people around players that create that barrier for journalists, but I think when a journalist has the respect of someone and they know the influence that they have, whether it's through the newspaper, through their social media followers. I think Henry Winter's probably got more followers on Twitter than the newspaper he works for. And that's true of quite a few individual journalists that have built up that reputation, that profile. When they're respected in their own right, I think players understand that they may not personally like them or get on with them, but they know the power that they have, and if they can ingratiate themselves, build that rapport or that relationship, they're probably going to write more positively about them when the push comes to shove. I think ultimately, when it comes down to decisions on a result or a fact or a cold light of day where someone's done the wrong thing, there's only so far that relationship is going to protect them. But it will become a balance of a decision for a journalist if they're quite close to someone and they have a contact and they get exclusive access to that person. They're probably going to treat them in a better light than if they didn't. So I think there are examples where. And a lot of the journalists write the autobiographies for players as well, and that's kind of one of the key ways that they kind of get close to them. Paul Hayward wrote Ferguson's book, Sam Wallace wrote Peter Crouch's book. I think Henry Winter wrote Stephen Gerrard's book. Like, you know, all these kind of relationships that they have. A lot of them are around the kind of the autobiographies, and that's kind of one of the key ways they get ingratiated with them.
I have a question. I would like to ask, do you think the media rights deals are making the Premiership more competitive? And what is the impact on the, because you used to work for the FA, what's the impact on the English national team? Just two-part question.
Yeah, I mean, the first question, I think it'd be hard to argue against the fact that increased investment has improved the league. I think we'll come on to the second one and the impact on the national team, but I think the first part, you know, Leicester's probably a great example of how the league is, from a funding point of view and from the broadcast revenue, is democratically split. So that all 20 teams pretty much, you know, there's a little bit more incentive for the people at the top, for the ones that win to the ones that get relegated, but pretty much there's a split of the revenue equally across the 20 clubs. If you went to Spain or to Germany or to France or to Italy, that's not the case. You know, particularly in Spain, Real Madrid and Barcelona pretty much swallow up all the TV rights, and that means that they maintain a monopoly where more often than not they're the ones that win the league. The Premier League, I think in the last few years, obviously Man City won it for the first time in 2012, Leicester won it for the first time 2016 this year. There have been kind of teams that have become competitive. Tottenham, you know, went close, could win it potentially this year. Liverpool have never won the Premier League, even though they're historically a hugely successful team in England. So I think that huge investment, primarily from Sky, BT and broadcast rights deals, I think it makes teams across the board more competitive. How it impacts the FA and the national team, it's probably difficult to argue that it's negative influence. A lot of the money that's been spent has been on foreign investment. A lot of players come in from overseas, and I think the last count it was under 30% number of players that start in the league that are English. So that's something that the FA has to look at and make coaching standards, make, you know, the facilities. I think they launched a facility, Park Life in Sheffield this week, where they're trying to raise the standard of young English players so that they're competitive when they get to 18, 19, and they're kind of pushing to be the next Harry Kane or Dele Alli or, you know, Marcus Rashford, because there are good young English players and they do get their chance, but kind of they've got to be better than the option from Brazil or the option from Portugal, and then that will make the national team better.
Do you find that there's a similar set of personalities and traits that are required to work at Sky in particular? So in your group, but in the media team, say in the PR team, do you find that there is like similar personalities shared between you that they all come from?
It's an interesting question. I think probably not. I think what you want in any team, but certainly from a PR team where we have to come up with creative thinking and, you know, new ways to sell or talk about or kind of generate coverage. A lot of the things that we're dealing with in sport or in kind of entertainment, they're quite cyclical. They're quite kind of, you know, they repeat over a year kind of schedule, and coming up with new ideas always needs new thinking. So having a group of people that have a completely different way of coming up with something is probably a kind of positive attribute. So I think even just the team that I work in, people that kind of are part of it are completely different. They all have different set of kind of attributes and different skills, and they all have generally quite different backgrounds. So I think there's no one specific set of skills that you would need to succeed. I think fundamentally kind of knowing what is newsworthy, what has that hook, what's interesting, and then being able to apply it to a situation is probably that key thing. But the way people are personally is their personalities and their characters. We've got quite a lot of different people.
say you do a campaign for the Lions tour, say it was last year and it was really successful, is there no temptation to just do something really similar the next time it comes around?
I think that's one of the things that we try and guard against, only because I think when you repeat something, you just run the risk of people, kind of it passing through them and not kind of having that same impact. If we think of some of the great ad campaigns or some of the great kind of PR campaigns, the things that really hit you, whether it's Apple or Guinness or Coca-Cola, they're not usually. Obviously, there's a core kind of whether it's a strapline or a slogan, logo. The things that the message they're trying to get across is usually the same, but the way that they do it is usually quite different. And to be impactful, you've got to do something that people haven't ever kind of thought of. I mean, Red Bull have done some great kind of PR stunts over the last few years and really kind of grabbed people's attention. The guy kind of parachuting from space obviously had a huge impact because it's such an amazing stunt, and everyone knew that was a company that took risks, that pushed it to the edge, that they're kind of really kind of aggressive and exciting company, and it really kind of told you a lot about the brand. If they went and did that again next year or the year after, I've seen it, I know it, and you kind of switch off a little bit. So for them, raising the bar every time is going to be even harder, because if you set it up here, out of space, where do you go next? But I think for everything within PR, you always want to do it differently the next time, because otherwise you run that risk of not grabbing the person's attention. Yeah.
Don't you think that pay to be broadcasting sport has helped, on one hand, to export British football in foreign countries, but on the other hand, as a way pro sport